Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to session 2 of the Women in Business Summit. I am Raisa and I'm the Corporate Relationship Manager in the KZN region. I will be moderating this panel discussion. The panel discussion will be covering aspects such as financial and estate planning, which I think is very relevant for us women today. Just a short introduction to the panelists before we begin. To my left, we have Salima Modak. Some of you may know her because she is from Cape Town. Salima is an Old Mutual Wealth Fund and investment specialist, and she has been one for the past 7 years. Her qualifications include a diploma in financial markets, specializing in wealth management. She also has a qualification from the Chartered Insurance Institute in the UK, specializing in financial services, regulation, and ethics. She has also completed the Senior Management Development Program from the Gordon Institute of Business Science and has a diploma in travel and tourism. We then have, further to my left, Rifka Hoyi. Rifka is an Exco and Remco director at national law firm STBB. She manages the Claremont branch in Cape Town. After 10 years of successful practice as Rifka Fatar attorneys, Rifka then merged her firm with STBB in 2008. She is the national head of STBB's Wills, Estates, Trusts and Curatorships Department, and also specializes in conveyancing and all other aspects of property law. We then have our very own Rahma Kar. She's the regional retail sales manager in the Western Cape region, and I'm sure she's a familiar face to a lot of you here. So welcome to all our panelists this morning. Okay, so I think this morning we're going to be exploring a very important topic for a lot of us. It's something which is essential for every woman, I think, regardless of where we're at in our life journey. And financial independence and security are obviously very critical for every woman, whether you're managing your personal finances, whether you're running a business, or planning for your family's future. And I think we'll all agree that historically, women have been very much less involved in financial and estate planning, and we've often left these kinds of decisions to others and the males in our families. But I think more and more women are now stepping into leadership roles. We're now becoming entrepreneurs and taking control of our own financial destinies. So in today's discussion, we're going to be covering the basics of wealth and financial management and planning, the importance of having a very good, sound financial plan, and I think the unique aspects of Islamic wills and estate planning. We're also going to look at a little bit into how women navigate inheritance situations, particularly those who may be divorced or widowed or have now undertaken the financial responsibilities of their dependents or family members. So I want to start with a little bit of a basic definition, and I'm going to address this to Salima first. What is financial or wealth planning? And what is wealth management? And why is it important for us as women to take control of our financial futures?
Thank you, Raisa. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you for having me here this morning. So, wealth management and wealth planning are really related concepts, and I think we need to unpack that a bit further by what is wealth? Is wealth simply having lots of money? Is wealth having enough money? Is wealth having more than what is required? And if we limit wealth to those concepts, how much is enough? What really are the limits with regard to wealth? So wealth planning and wealth management is really, they are related concepts. Wealth planning refers to a holistic approach. So in other words, whether we are running our own business, what would be our wealth plan with regard to our business? If we are earning an income, what would be our plans related to our income? And just our overall holistic financial well-being. Wealth management is really a process that involves, again, investment planning, estate planning, how we manage the wealth of our business, etc. So they really are related concepts. Why it's important for women, one is because more and more women are outliving men. So there's the longevity aspect. There's also the rising costs of healthcare. Increasingly, we're also seeing that there's an increase in female-headed households as well. We see an increase in what we call intergenerational wealth. So in other words, the middle tier of a generation having to take care of an older generation and a younger generation as well. So wealth management and wealth planning really should encompass all those aspects of wealth.
Absolutely, thank you for that. So you mentioned management of businesses when you mentioned wealth management, and just to the team and the panel here, I want to know what financial planning tools can, obviously there are a lot of business women in the audience, what financial tools can we use when setting up businesses, and then to Refika also from a legal perspective and a compliance perspective, and then Rahma also from a banking perspective, what options do we have in terms of managing our businesses?
So I think the first aspect of a financial planning tool would be to establish a relationship with an accredited financial planner. Alternatively, many investment houses and wealth management houses would have a basic tool or basic calculator. It's important not to mistake that calculator for an actual financial plan. And that is why my first point was to make an appointment or to establish a relationship with a financial planner. Lots of people mistake having a policy, you know, the concept of I have a policy, I have an education policy, or I have a savings policy for a financial plan. And those are very different concepts. So having a policy, whatever that policy may be, is really just one step or perhaps a portion of implementing your financial plan. So the first step would be not to sort of overwhelm ourselves with tools and calculators. The first step would be to sit down with an accredited financial planner, establish a relationship where your business partner or where your spouses have relationships with financial planners, is to ensure if you are part of that decision process, if you are part of that relationship as well.
Thanks, Raisa. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. First, can I thank you for being here? Well done for making the time for yourselves. Well done, us. It's so important in anyone who goes into any type of business, whether you're running a small business or if you're involved in a family business or if you're a director or a shareholder in a bigger concern, to understand what that actually means. What do you own? Are you involved in a CC? Are you a registered member of that CC? What does that mean? What are your rights as a member, and what are your obligations and your risks in being a member? If you're involved in a family business and you're putting in the time and the effort, are you a salaried employee? Are you a director? Are you a shareholder? Do you know the difference between the rights and responsibilities of being a director and a shareholder, because they are very different? Do you understand that the one is the owner, the other one isn't? If you're involved in a small business, do you understand the tax implications? So the first step is to understand what you're actually involved in. And then speaking to clever financial people that I'm surrounded by right now. I stick to my knitting, as they would say. I'm an attorney, I'm not a finance person. But it's about understanding the structure that you're involved in. And if you're not part of that structure, you need to understand why. So if you're in a family business, but your name is not on any paperwork, what does that mean for you when the person whose name is on the paperwork, it might be a husband, it might be your dad, what happens when that person passes away? What are your rights? What are you left with? And in turn, once you understand your ownership and you understand your responsibilities and your risks, you'll then be able to plan further as to what happens when something happens to you in that business, what happens to your heirs, and when that person who you're depending on, what happens when that person passes away, and what are you left with that?
Thank you so much for that. And then to Rahma, I think from a banking perspective, what options are available then for entrepreneurs and businesswomen?
Yes, Raisa. So we are faced many times where clients have a beautiful business and they run it very profitably, but they run it in a personal account and not separating the personal income from the business income. And this is why we encourage people to open up a business banking account, which basically separates the two income. And our option is where we provide you with a business banking account with a corporate banking platform. We are able to do internet banking. You can do EFT payments, you can do beneficiary payments. It all comes from the same platform and at very competitive pricing. Our bank accounts also come with the machines as well. So we've got service providers that join up with us and you can have that linked to your business account. And many times we do see the situation where clients come into the bank and maybe the spouse was running the bank account and everything is frozen because now they can't, the person passed away. So it is encouraged, and we've got a business banking specialist within our region, and you're most welcome to reach out to me and we can put that person in touch with everybody, inshallah.
Thank you for that, Rahman. I think it's important, I think, especially as Muslim business women, to ensure that we're conducting our businesses in an Islamic manner and obviously opening those Islamic banking accounts as opposed to conventional. And alhamdulillah, I think in South Africa, aside from Al Baraka Bank, we do have a lot of options that are available to us as Muslims. I want to cover, we spoke a bit now about wealth management and what financial planning and wealth management is, but obviously estate planning is equally important. And I think you touched on it, Rifka, and you mentioned what happens when, you know, a spouse sort of passes on. But I think as women, it's not just about what happens after we're gone, but it's also about ensuring that our assets and, you know, the hard work that we're putting into our businesses and that our legacy is actually protected and passed on according to our wishes. And I think for women, particularly those who may be, you know, widows, divorcees, those who may not be, but they just, you know, they are the heads of their households and they now have to take on these financial responsibilities. And understanding estate planning is very important. So to yourself, I want to just get a basic definition and understanding of what actually is estate planning, and then why is it important and how do we go about now structuring, or what's the starting point for us to start this estate planning process?
Okay, so very simply, estate planning is, as Raisa says, it's that succession planning that you're going to do while you're still alive and breathing. And it's a simple process of looking at what you own versus what you owe. That's the starting point. So you're going to look at first, what do you own in your own name? And that's such an important question because there are so many people sitting here and so many people in our community that don't actually own what they think they own. And so I'm talking about your house. Do you own your home? Do you co-own your home? Do you own your car? I mentioned earlier about your business interest. Are you a shareholder? Are you a member of that CC? Are you a salaried employee? As an attorney, I throw paperwork at a lot of problems, and so make sure that you've got a paper trail. Unfortunately, the Sunday afternoon conversations where, you know, everyone knows that mom and dad always said this must happen. That's not legally binding on anybody. And I've been doing this for a very long time, and unfortunately I see a very greedy, ugly side to people, especially in our community, when it comes to death. So what someone said is not legally binding. You're going to need that piece of paper, and it needs signatures. And so you get in touch with people like ourselves to put that paperwork in place so that you understand what you own while you're alive. Also, what is owned by you but you don't own it yet? So that is what is inheritance that's going to be coming your way and in turn to your children. Are you a beneficiary of a family trust? And do you understand what that means? What are you entitled to while you're alive, and what would you be entitled to, or your dependents, when you pass away? And then look at things that you've got like shares and investments. So as much as you want to look at fixed assets, it's very important that you understand the liquid cash that you've got or that would be in place when you pass away. Because owning assets and passing away, owning assets is a very expensive process. It's expensive to pass away. So you need money to pay someone like me. You're going to pay money to the deeds office to transfer property. You're going to pay the master's office 7,000 Rand just for, you know, your estate being reported. It all adds up. If you've got a bond and your bond is fully settled, it's going to cost 6,000 Rand just to cancel your bond. If you've lost your title deed, that's another 5,500 Rand right there. All of these things add up. And it's very difficult for someone like me to sit across from someone who's grieving, or they're planning and their eyes get bigger and bigger like yours are right now, to say, this is what I own, but this is what I owe. And what do you owe when you're alive? and what are you going to owe when you pass away. So SARS is such a leveler when you pass away. I mean, you're trying to be all tax efficient and tax evasive and ignoring things, and you're actually a VAT vendor, but you didn't realize it, or you knew, but you blocked it out. You know, there's provisional tax because you've got that flat up the road in Claremont, and actually you're a provisional taxpayer if you are getting a rental income. When you pass away, SARS is notified of your death. And so all of that comes out of the woodwork. And our debts don't magically disappear when we pass away, everybody. SARS comes to collect, everybody comes to collect the overdraft, all of those things. So it's very important to understand in estate planning what you own and what you owe. And so, you know, you go and speak to someone like Salima, and she'll be chatting to you about your, you know, your policies and whatever wealth management you've got, and you're chatting to Rahma about your banking, and then you come to someone like me, and we sit down and we look at, okay, what happens if you pass away next week? If any of you ever consulted with me, I always speak about next week or tomorrow. I don't speak about far in the future. If you pass away tomorrow, what legacy are you leaving? Yes, alhamdulillah, you've worked hard for that house, but what debt are you leaving? And as I'm speaking to you, think of yourself as a dependent as well. What happens when the breadwinner in your home passes away? What debt is he leaving you? Do you understand all of those things? So that's estate planning. It's about understanding what you're leaving and what you're going to be left with if someone else passes away. And do you understand how you should go about putting things in place, whether it's policies, whether it's a will, you know, do you have trust funds, do you have money in the kitty, or does your family understand that that investment property is going to have to be sold? Sometimes the family home has to be sold. So all of those things get taken into account when we consult, and it's really worthwhile rather than putting your head in the sand and coming to speak to me after your loved ones passed away, or sitting across from your family when you've passed away, and then we try and unpack, whereas you could have hopefully done something while
So
you're alive.
I think, you know,
if I
like
could
you mentioned, there's a lot that you need to take stock of, and you know, that's very important to take stock of what we own versus what we owe. But I wanted to just cover, you mentioned that when people come and consult with you, you're always speaking about the future. And I wanted to Salima and yourself, what documentation do we need to ensure that we have now, not just our own personal estate, our own wealth and our businesses, but also you mentioned the breadwinners, our spouses, our fathers. What documentation, and I know we speak often of a safe file that we have with all the contact details, etc. What do we need to ensure we have now to plan for that? Because I think you mentioned that when a spouse or a family member passes away and now we're inheriting all this wealth, we're in a very vulnerable position. We're also very emotional at that stage. So it's important, I think, to plan for that in advance. Yeah.
So you've made a very, very good point, Raisa, and to Rifka's point as well. So firstly, it's important not to look at wealth management or your investment plan separately to estate planning. It really needs to be looked at simultaneously and holistically as well. In terms of nominating a beneficiary on your retirement annuity or your pension, it's going to have an impact in terms of your estate. Leaving things to chance is going to have an impact on your estate. Nominating minor children as beneficiaries, thinking I'm going to pass away when I'm 90 and my children are 40 years old, it's going to have an impact on your estate. So COVID has taught us that minors have started inheriting. How do we manage that? The impacts in terms of who's going to take care of our children if we pass away while they are still minors. So coming back to Reisa's question is that it's important to have a document where we have copies of